At this point, we should spend a little bit of time talking about web architecture. Now, you really need to understand what the web architecture of a particular site is so you can understand, first of all, what there is to go after, and also what there may be within the site. So as an example, here I've got this page here, welcome to the Guess Num game, and I'm guessing based on what I'm seeing here and what I have seen from playing around is really all there is just a web server here. Even though I have programmatic access to this and there's some forms that I could play around with and there's some logic in terms of application code behind it, really all there is a web server. Now, if I were to take a look at this site, for example, and I go to this site instead, what I can see here is I've got a login, and it looks like there's some content here, and I'm guessing that there's probably a database just from looking at it. Of course, I happen to know that there is a database. I set this up. But based on what I'm seeing here, I'm guessing there's probably a database of some sort. First of all, there's username and password, and the best place to store that sort of information is in a database. And it looks like there's some content here where I may need to store a lot of information. So there's a database behind this. So that's part of the architecture of this particular site. There's the web server, and then behind that, there's the database. Sometimes you may run into an instance where there's a web application server. So in addition to the web server itself, you may run into a case where there's a web application server where there's more extensive logic behind it. So, for example, if we were to just look up application server here, you would find things like BEA has a web application server, Oracle has a web application server, the .NET framework is an application server, Java, there are a lot of application servers. So in addition to things like PHP that may be on the front end, there may also be like a Java application server with code in behind that, and then the application server would talk to the database. That's a more complex web architecture. Now, there may also be load balancers stuck in the middle as well. We're not really going to worry so much about those. What we're more concerned about is where the code actually lives and how we can actually access that. And from that, we can do things like cross-site scripting and cross-site request forgery and SQL injection and all of those sorts of attacks. But in order to understand where we should spend our time, it's useful to get a good idea of the type of web application architecture that's in place on the particular site that you're working on.